Princess Hana walked slowly through the grand halls of the Valerian palace. Her long silver dress swept across the polished crystal floors as she made her way to the council chambers. Today would bring news that could destroy everything her family had built over thousands of years. The massive doors opened with a soft hum, revealing the circular chamber where the High Council waited. 12 elders sat in floating chairs arranged around a central platform. Their faces showed worry and fear, emotions that telepathic Valerians rarely tried to hide from each other. Elder Kyung stood as Hana entered. He was the oldest member of Vir, the council, his pale blue skin marked with the intricate tattoos that showed his rank. His mind touched hers gently, sharing respect mixed with deep sadness. "Your Highness," he said aloud, though they could have communicated through thought, alone. "The final test results have arrived from the medical facility." Hana stepped onto the central platform as holographic displays materialized around her. Charts and genetic maps filled the air, showing data that had taken months to collect and analyze. The numbers told a story that made her heart sink. "Show me everything," she commanded, though part of her wanted to run from this room and never return. Dr. Sunho, the chief medical officer, activated the main display. "The genetic scans are complete, Princess. We tested every member of the royal family, living and deceased. The pattern is clear and undeniable. The hologram showed a family tree stretching back 10 generations. Green markers indicated successful births, while red markers showed failed pregnancies or sterile individuals. As the timeline moved toward the present, the green markers became fewer and fewer until almost none remained. Your great-grandmother had 7 children," Dr. Sunho explained. "Your grandmother had 3. Your mother had only you. The fertility rates drop with each generation." Hana stared at the data, feeling the weight of responsibility crushing down on her. "What about the other noble families?" "The same pattern affects them all," Elder Minji replied from her seat. "Some bloodlines have already ended completely. Others have only 1 or 2 young members left." The holographic display shifted to show population data from across the Valerian Empire. The numbers were terrifying. Birth rates had fallen by 90% over the past century. Entire planets now had more elderly citizens than children. But why? Hana asked, though she suspected the answer. Our ancestors were incredibly fertile. The old records speak of families with dozens of children. Dr. Sunho manipulated the display to show genetic comparison charts. Our people achieved something remarkable over the millennia. We eliminated genetic diseases, enhanced our telepathic abilities, and extended our lifespans. We became as close to perfect as any species has ever been. And that perfection is killing us, Hana said quietly. Yes, Your Highness. In removing all genetic variation and flaws, we also removed the biological diversity that drives reproduction. Our genes have become so refined and similar that they can no longer combine effectively to create new life. Elder Kyung stepped forward. The medical teams have tried everything: gene therapy, artificial enhancement, even attempts to reintroduce older genetic patterns from preserved samples. Nothing works. Hana felt the despair radiating from every mind in the room. These were the wisest and most powerful individuals in the Empire, and they had no solutions to offer. How long do we have? She asked, preparing herself for the worst. The computer models are quite clear, Dr. Sunho replied. If current trends continue, there will be no new Valerian births within 50 years. The species will effectively be extinct within 200 years as the remaining population ages and dies. The silence that followed was deafening. Even their telepathic communication seemed muted by the enormity of what they faced. Elder Minji spoke first. There are political implications we must consider, Princess. The outer provinces are already questioning the Empire's stability. If word spreads about our fertility crisis, rebellion, Hana finished. The subject worlds will see weakness and declare independence. Worse than that, Elder Kyung added grimly. The Zephyrian Kingdom and the Arcturian Alliance have been building their military forces. They sense an opportunity. Hana walked to the chamber's viewing wall, which offered a panoramic view of the capital city below. Millions of Valerians went about their daily lives, unaware that their civilization was slowly dying. The floating vehicles, crystal spires, and energy gardens represented thousands of years of advancement in culture. "There must be something," she said, pressing her hand against the cool surface. "Some solution we haven't considered." Dr. Sunho cleared his throat. "There is one possibility, though it seems impossible. The research teams have been studying other species, looking for genetic patterns that might help. And most advanced species face similar problems to ours. Genetic refinement leads to reduced fertility. But there are some primitive species that maintain extremely high reproductive rates and genetic diversity." Hana turned back to face the council. "Which species?" "Humans, primarily. Their genetic patterns are chaotic and unpredictable, full of mutations and variations that we would consider flaws. But this chaos appears to be the key to their reproductive success." "Humans," Hana repeated thoughtfully. "The primitive species from the outer rim, barely capable of interstellar travel. Could their genetics help us somehow?" "Theoretically, perhaps. But the biological differences between our species are enormous. Any attempt to combine Valerian and human genetics would be highly experimental and extremely dangerous." Hana stood, in silence, weighing impossible choices. Outside, the twin suns of Valeria were setting, casting long shadows across the crystal city. Somewhere in the darkness, enemy fleets were probably already planning their invasion of a dying empire. The princess of a doomed race looked out at her people and made a decision that would change everything. Dr. Jiwan woke up to the familiar hum of the energy barriers that kept him locked in his small cell. 3 weeks had passed since the Valerian patrol ships had captured his research vessel near the border zone. He had been studying plant samples from an uninhabited moon when the conflict erupted between human colonies and Valerian forces. The cell was comfortable enough, with a sleeping platform, basic facilities, and even a small viewing window that showed the stars outside. But comfort did not make up for the fact that he was a prisoner on an alien ship, thousands of light years from home. Every few days, Valerian scientists would come to take blood samples and run various scans on him. They seemed fascinated by human biology, though they treated him more like a laboratory animal than a person. The tests were not painful, but the way they looked at him made him feel like something disgusting they had found under a rock. Jiwan had completed his doctorate in xenobiology just 2 years ago. His specialty was studying how different species adapted to various environments. He had dreamed of making peaceful contact with alien civilizations and learning from their knowledge. Instead, he found himself a prisoner of war. The cell door made a soft chiming sound and slid open. Jiwan expected to see the usual pair of guards who escorted him to the medical bay. Instead, a figure he had never seen before stepped inside. She was clearly Valerian, with the pale blue skin and silver hair that marked their species. But everything about her was different from the scientists and guards he had met. Her clothes were made of flowing materials that seemed to shimmer with their own light. Jewelry made of crystals adorned her neck and arms. Most striking of all were her eyes, which were a deep violet color unlike anything he had ever seen. 2 other Valerians followed her into the cell. One was Dr. Minho, the lead researcher who had been conducting most of the tests on him. The other was a female scientist Jiwan had not met before. "Dr. Jiwan," the violet-eyed woman said, and her voice was like music. There was something about the way Valerians spoke that made even simple words sound beautiful. "I am Princess Hana of the Valerian Empire." Jiwan's eyes widened in surprise. He had been captured by royalty. That explained the elegant appearance and the way the other Valerians showed her respect. "Your Highness," he said, not sure if he should bow or remain seated. "I am honored to meet you, though I wish it were under better circumstances." Princess Hana studied him with intense curiosity. "Dr. Minho tells me you are a scientist who studies biological systems." "That's correct, Your Highness. I specialize in xenobiology, particularly how different species adapt and evolve in various environments." Dr. Minho stepped forward and activated a portable holographic projector. The air filled with complex 3-dimensional images of DNA structures, genetic charts, and biological data. "Dr. Jiwan," Dr. Minho said, though his tone suggested he found it distasteful to speak directly to a human. Our research teams have been analyzing genetic samples from various species across the galaxy. We have made some interesting discoveries about human biology. The holographic display showed a comparison between Valerian and human genetic structures. Even to Jiwan's trained eye, the differences were remarkable. Your genetic patterns are extremely chaotic, Dr. Minho continued. Where Valerian genetics show clear organization and optimization, human genetics appear random and full of variations. Jiwan examined the data more closely. Our genetic diversity is one of humanity's greatest strengths, he said. It allows us to adapt to new environments and resist diseases. The female scientist spoke for the first time. We are Dr. Yuna. These variations you call strengths appear to us as flaws and imperfections. That depends on your perspective, Jiwan replied. Genetic perfection might seem desirable, but it comes with serious disadvantages. Princess Hana moved closer to the holographic display. What do you mean? Jiwan stood up and pointed to specific parts of the genetic comparison. Look at these patterns. Valerian genetics show incredible refinement and elimination of unwanted traits. You have essentially created a genetic monoculture. Is that bad? Dr. Yuna asked. In agricultural terms, monocultures are extremely vulnerable, Jiwan explained. A single disease or environmental change can wipe out an entire crop. Genetic diversity provides protection against such threats. Dr. Minho manipulated the display to show fertility rates across different species. The data suggests a correlation between genetic refinement and reproductive challenges. Jiwan studied the information carefully. The pattern was clear and disturbing. Species with highly refined genetics showed dramatically lower birth rates than those with more chaotic genetic systems. You have bred yourselves into a genetic dead end, he said bluntly. Your pursuit of perfection has eliminated the very randomness that drives evolution and successful reproduction. Princess Hana stepped back, and Jiwan noticed something strange. Throughout his time in captivity, he had sensed that the Valerians were communicating with each other in ways beyond speech. Sometimes they would react to unspoken thoughts or seem to share information without words. But with Princess Hana, he felt nothing of that sort. You cannot read my thoughts, he realized. Suddenly, Princess Hana's violet eyes widened in surprise. No, I cannot. This is the first time in my life that I have encountered a mind I cannot touch. Most humans are not telepathic, Jiwan explained. Our thoughts remain private unless we choose to share them through speech or writing. The concept seemed to fascinate her. For several moments, she simply stared at him as if trying to understand what mental privacy might feel like. Dr. Jiwan, she said finally, can this genetic chaos you describe help save my people? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Jiwan looked around at the three Valerians waiting for his answer, knowing that his response might determine not only his fate, but the future of an entire civilization. The laboratory had become Jiwan's second home over the past month. What had started as forced cooperation between prisoner and captors had slowly transformed into something resembling genuine scientific collaboration. The sterile white walls were now covered with genetic charts, evolutionary diagrams, and research, notes written in both human and Valerian languages. Dr. Minho no longer looked at Jiwan with open disgust. The Valerian scientist had begun to appreciate the human's unconventional thinking, even if he would never admit it publicly. Dr. Yuna had grown curious about human biology and asked detailed questions about Earth's evolutionary history. The key difference, Jiwan explained while pointing to a holographic DNA model, is that humans never tried to control our evolution. We let natural selection and random mutations guide our development. But that must have resulted in many genetic diseases and physical imperfections, Dr. Yuna observed. Yes, it did, but it also gave us incredible adaptability. Humans can survive in almost any environment on Earth, from frozen wastelands to scorching deserts. Our genetic diversity makes us resilient. Princess Hana listened from her usual spot, near the main console. She had been visiting the laboratory almost daily, officially to monitor the research progress. In reality, she came because she found Jiwon's presence deeply peaceful. For someone who had lived her entire life surrounded by telepathic minds, constantly broadcasting thoughts and emotions, the quiet space around the human felt like a sanctuary. When she spoke with him, she could focus on his words without being distracted by the underlying mental chatter that accompanied every conversation with her own people. "Your species doesn't share thoughts at all?" she asked during one of their late-night sessions when most of the other scientists had gone to rest. Jiwon looked up from the genetic sequencer he was calibrating. "Not directly. We share through words, actions, art, music, writing. Our thoughts remain private until we actively choose to communicate them." The concept fascinated Hana. "What is it like to have complete mental privacy?" "I suppose it's like having a room in your mind that belongs only to you," Jiwon said thoughtfully. "A place where you can think freely without anyone else knowing what goes on inside." Hana closed her eyes and tried to imagine such a thing. Since childhood, she had been aware of the thoughts and emotions of everyone around her. Privacy was a foreign concept among telepathic Valyrians. "It sounds lonely," she said. "Sometimes it can be. But it also means that when we do choose to share our thoughts and feelings with someone, it becomes special, intimate. We have to trust each other enough to be vulnerable." As their conversations grew longer and more personal, word began to spread throughout the palace. Servants whispered about the princess spending unusual amounts of time with the human prisoner. Court officials expressed concern about the appropriateness of such frequent contact between royalty and a member of an inferior species. The whispers eventually reached the ears of Lord Taehyun, the most powerful conservative noble in the empire. He was a traditionalist who believed strongly in Valyrian superiority and the purity of the royal bloodline. The idea of Princess Hana associating closely with a primitive human filled him with disgust and anger. Lord Taehyun called for an emergency session of the High Council. When Princess Hana arrived at the chamber, she found the 12 elders arranged in a formal circle, their faces showing various degrees of concern and disapproval. "Your Highness," Lord Taehyun began without preamble, "we must discuss your recent behavior regarding the human prisoner. Dr. Jiwon is providing valuable assistance with our fertility research," Hana replied calmly. "His insights have advanced our understanding significantly." "That may be true," Elder Kyung said diplomatically, "but the amount of time you spend with him has raised questions about propriety." Lord Taehyun stood from his floating chair, his pale blue skin flushed with emotion. "Propriety? This goes far. Beyond questions of propriety. The princess of the Valyrian Empire is spending her days in intimate conversation with a creature barely evolved from primitive beasts. Dr. Jiwon is a highly educated scientist," Hana said, her voice taking on a dangerous edge. "He has contributed more to solving our fertility crisis in 1 month than our own researchers accomplished in decades." "He is human," Lord Taehyun spat. "A species so inferior that they cannot even communicate telepathically. They are little better than the animals they evolved from." "Those animals, as you call them, may be the key to saving our entire civilization," Hana shot back. Lord Taehyun's mental projection filled with rage and disgust. "You would contaminate the royal bloodline with association to such creatures? Your behavior brings shame upon thousands of years of noble heritage. My behavior is focused on preventing the extinction of our people," Hana replied firmly. "At what cost?" Lord Taehyun demanded. "The other nobles are beginning to question your fitness to rule. Some speak of finding a more suitable heir from distant royal cousins." The threat was clear. If Hana continued her association with Jiwon, the nobility might move to replace her as the rightful heir to the throne. Elder Minji tried to mediate. "Perhaps we can find a compromise. The humans' research could continue under closer supervision with less direct involvement from your highness." "No," Hana said quietly, surprising everyone in the chamber. "I will not abandon the most promising research we have conducted in generations because of prejudice and narrow-minded thinking." Lord Taehyun's voice rose to nearly a shout. "You would risk our entire civilization for this creature?" Princess Hana stood slowly, her violet eyes blazing with determination. The decision crystallized in her mind even as she spoke the words that would change everything. "I would risk everything to save it." The chamber fell silent as the implications of her statement sank in. Princess Hana had just chosen the fate of a human over the approval of her own nobles. The consequences of that choice would reshape the future of two species. The Chamber of Unity stood deep beneath the royal palace, carved from a single massive crystal that had formed naturally in the planet's core millions of years ago. Ancient symbols covered the walls, glowing softly with their own inner light. This sacred room had witnessed the bonding ceremonies of Valerian royalty for over 3,000 years, but never anything like what was about to happen. Princess Hana walked slowly down the crystal steps, her ceremonial robes flowing behind her like liquid starlight. The traditional bonding dress had been worn by every Valerian princess for centuries, but she was the first to wear it for a union with another species. Ji-won waited at the center of the chamber, dressed in simple white robes that the palace tailors had quickly prepared. He looked calm, but Hana could see the tension in his shoulders. They both knew this ceremony had never been attempted between different species. The risks were enormous and completely unknown. Elder Kyung stood near the altar, his face showing deep reluctance and worry. As the eldest member of the High Council, tradition required him to perform the ceremony, but he clearly wished he could refuse. The other elders arranged themselves around the circular chamber, their telepathic projections filled with doubt and fear. "Your Highness," Elder Kyung said quietly as Hana approached the ritual circle, "there is still time to reconsider. The bonding process involves complete mental and genetic integration. No human has ever survived such a procedure." "We have run every simulation possible," Hana replied firmly. "The theoretical models suggest it might work." "Theoretical models are not the same as reality," Dr. Minho added from his position near the monitoring equipment. "If Dr. Ji-won's neural pathways cannot adapt to telepathic integration, the feedback could kill him instantly." Ji-won stepped forward. "Every major scientific breakthrough involves some level of risk. If we succeed, we could save your entire civilization. If we fail, at least we tried." Outside the chamber, they could hear the sound of running footsteps and shouted orders. Lord Taehyun had discovered their plans and was mobilizing loyal guards to stop the ceremony. The palace was splitting into factions, with some supporting the princess and others demanding that the human be executed immediately. "We need to begin now," Hana said urgently, as the sounds of conflict grew louder. Elder Kyung activated the ancient bonding apparatus with obvious reluctance. The crystal walls began to hum with energy, and patterns of light started dancing across the carved symbols, the chamber filled with a soft musical tone that seemed to resonate from the crystal itself. "Princess Hana, of the House of Valeria," Elder Kyung intoned in the formal language of the ceremony, "do you willingly enter into sacred bonding with this being, knowing that your minds and souls will be joined for eternity?" "I do," Hana replied, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was about to attempt. "Dr. Ji-won of the human species," Elder Kyung continued, struggling with the unfamiliar words, "do you willingly accept the bonding, knowing that the process may destroy your mind or end your life?" "I do," Ji-won said simply. The chamber doors burst open as Lord Taehyun led a group of armed guards into the sacred space. "Stop this madness," he shouted. "I will not allow the royal bloodline to be contaminated by alien genetics." "You are too late," Princess Hana said, as she and Ji-won joined hands in the center of the ritual circle. "Elder Kyung, begin the integration sequence." The old elder hesitated for a moment, torn between tradition and his fear of the consequences. Finally, he activated the bonding crystal with a gesture that sent waves of energy cascading through the chamber. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. Ji-won felt his consciousness suddenly expand beyond the boundaries of his own mind. He could sense Hana's thoughts, her emotions, her memories stretching back through decades of royal life. But instead of being crushed by the alien mental patterns, his human brain began adapting with remarkable speed. Hana experienced something she had never imagined possible. For the first time in her life, she touched a mind that was completely individual, separate, and private. Ji-won's thoughts were like a calm pool of water compared to the rushing river of telepathic communication she was used to. The genetic integration happened simultaneously with the mental bonding. Scanners around the chamber showed impossible readings, as human and Valerian DNA began interacting in ways that defied all known science. Instead of rejecting each other, the genetic patterns seemed to complement and strengthen one another. Lord Taehyun and his guards were frozen in place, unable to approach the ritual circle due to the intense energy field surrounding it. They could only watch in horror and fascination as two different species attempted something that had never been done before. Ji-won's neural pathways reshaped themselves to accommodate the telepathic link, while maintaining the individual thought processes that made him human. His genetic markers began producing proteins that matched Valerian fertility requirements, while Hana's reproductive system started responding to the genetic diversity his DNA provided. The energy reached its peak and then gradually faded, leaving the chamber in relative silence. Princess Hana and Ji-won stood in the center of the circle, still holding hands but somehow different. They were still recognizably themselves, yet something fundamental had changed. "It worked," Dr. Minho whispered in amazement as he read the scanner results. "The genetic incompatibility markers have disappeared completely." Ji-won looked at Hana with wonder. He could sense her thoughts when she chose to share them, but her mind remained respectfully separate from his. She smiled back, feeling the quiet strength of his individual consciousness alongside her own telepathic abilities. The curse that had doomed the Valerian royal bloodline was finally broken. The great assembly hall of the Galactic Council had never hosted such an unusual gathering. Representatives from over 300 worlds filled the massive amphitheater, their diverse forms creating a spectacular display of galactic civilization. Reptilian delegates from the Serpentine world sat alongside crystalline beings from the Silicon sectors, while gaseous entities floated in specialized containment suits. At the center of it all stood Princess Hana, now 6 months pregnant, her hand resting gently on her rounded belly. The formal robe she wore had been specially designed to accommodate her changing figure, the flowing fabric shimmering with threads of silver and gold that caught the light from the chamber's energy. Orbs beside her stood Ji-won, wearing the official robes of a Valerian prince consort. The transformation from prisoner of war to royal spouse had been remarkable, but nothing compared to the change in how the galaxy viewed his entire species. 6 months ago, humans had been considered a primitive backwater civilization barely worthy of notice. Today, they were being courted by some of the most advanced societies in known space. "Honored delegates," Princess Hana began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustic systems. "I stand before you today to share news that will reshape our understanding of life itself." The assembled representatives fell silent, their attention focused entirely on the pregnant Valerian princess and her human mate. "The child I carry represents more than the continuation of the Valerian royal bloodline," she continued, her free hand finding Ji-won's. "It represents the future of both our species and perhaps the solution to problems that have plagued advanced civilizations throughout the galaxy." Murmurs of curiosity rippled through the crowd. The fertility crisis affecting the Valerians had been kept secret for most of the galaxy, but rumors of genetic problems among highly evolved species had circulated for years. Dr. Minho stepped forward from his position among the Valerian delegation. Over the past months, he had become the leading expert on human Valerian genetic compatibility, and his research had attracted attention from scientists across dozens of worlds. "Distinguished colleagues," Dr. Minho said, activating a holographic display that filled the air above the assembly floor. "Our studies have revealed something extraordinary. The genetic chaos that characterizes human DNA is not a flaw to be corrected, but a feature that provides incredible biological advantages." The hologram showed comparative genetic analyses between humans and various advanced species. The pattern was clear and shocking. Every highly evolved civilization had experienced similar fertility declines as their genetics became more refined and perfected. "The pursuit of genetic perfection leads inevitably to reproductive failure," Dr. Minho explained. Species that eliminate genetic diversity eventually lose the ability to produce viable offspring. A delegate from the Arcturian Federation raised a crystalline appendage. Are you suggesting that genetic imperfection is somehow beneficial? Not imperfection, Jiwan said, stepping forward to address the assembly. Diversity. Human genetics contain millions of years of evolutionary adaptation that most advanced species have eliminated from their own gene pools. The implications were staggering. Throughout the galaxy, the most technologically advanced civilizations were facing gradual extinction due to their own genetic refinement. Princess Hana smiled as she felt a gentle kick from within her womb. Our child will be born with both Valerian telepathic abilities and human genetic adaptability. Early scans suggest capabilities that neither species possesses alone. Elder Kyung, who had initially opposed the bonding ceremony, now served as one of its strongest advocates. The preliminary genetic analysis indicates that the child will have enhanced telepathic range and sensitivity, combined with human resilience and adaptability. We may be witnessing the birth of an entirely new form of life. The news had already begun transforming galactic politics. Earth, previously ignored by major powers, suddenly found itself flooded with diplomatic requests. Human genetic material had become the most valuable resource in the galaxy, more precious than rare metals or energy crystals. Over the past months, Jiwan continued, we have established the Human Valerian Genetic Research Institute. Noble families from across the Valerian Empire have requested assistance in addressing their own fertility challenges. Indeed, the success of the royal bonding had sparked a revolution in Valerian society. Young nobles who had faced lives of childlessness now saw hope in partnerships with humans. What had once been considered shameful contamination of bloodlines was now viewed as genetic salvation. The Research Institute had become a bustling center of activity. Human volunteers, many of them former prisoners of war, now worked alongside Valerian scientists as honored colleagues. The first arranged marriages between human scientists and Valerian nobles had already taken place, with more planned each month. But this extends beyond our two species, Princess Hana said, addressing the broader assembly. Other advanced civilizations, facing similar fertility crises, may find solutions through genetic partnerships with younger, more diverse species. The concept was revolutionary. Instead of viewing primitive species as inferior, advanced civilizations would need to recognize them as essential partners in their own survival. A delegate from the Silicon sectors transmitted a question through the translation system. What of the cultural implications? How do telepathic and non-telepathic species successfully integrate? Jiwan and Hana exchanged a look that spoke volumes about their personal experience. We have learned that different ways of thinking and communicating create strength, not weakness, Hana replied. The quiet individuality of human thought complements the connected consciousness of Valerian telepathy. As the assembly session concluded, representatives from dozens of worlds lined up to speak with the royal couple. The Crystalline Confederacy wanted to discuss genetic partnerships with Earth's mining colonies. The Aquatic Alliance was interested in human adaptability to underwater environments. Even the proud Zephyrian Kingdom, traditional enemies of the Valerian Empire, had sent unofficial diplomatic feelers. That evening, as Hana and Jiwan retired to their quarters aboard the council station, they reflected on how much had changed since their first meeting in a prison cell. Do you think our child will understand the weight of what they represent? Hana asked, her hand resting on her belly. Jiwan placed his hand over hers, feeling the strong heartbeat of their unborn child. I think they'll understand that sometimes the greatest strength comes from embracing what others see as weakness. Outside, their window, the stars shone with the light of hundreds of civilizations, many of which were now looking to humanity not as primitives to be ignored, but as partners essential to their own survival. The Valerian Empire would not merely survive its genetic crisis. It would evolve into something greater than either species could have achieved alone.